All right, today we are climbing what's called the logistics ladder. We're going to break down that secret and sometimes really complex journey your stuff takes to get from a factory somewhere on the other side of the world all the way to your front door. So let's get right into it. You know that feeling, right? You click buy now, and a couple of days later, a box just shows up. It almost feels like magic. But behind the scenes, it's this incredibly sophisticated dance between different logistics providers. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain and show you exactly how that system works, one rung on the ladder at a time. So let's start at the very bottom of the ladder. We're talking about the two most fundamental ways to get things moved: the total do-it-yourself method and that very first step of hiring a little bit of outside help. Okay, so first-party logistics, or 1PL. This is as basic as it gets. You can think of it as the ultimate DIY approach. The same company that makes the product is the exact same company that delivers it. They're using their own trucks, their own drivers, everything is in-house. A perfect, simple example? Think about a local farm. They grow the vegetables, they load them up onto their own truck with their own staff, and drive them down to the local grocery store. It's super simple, it's direct, and it's all handled by them. That's 1PL in a nutshell. But what happens when that farm gets really popular? They want to start selling to stores in the next state over. Now they could buy a whole new fleet of trucks, but that costs a ton of money. So instead, they take their first step up the logistics ladder, and they hire a specialist. And that brings us to a 2PL, or a second-party logistics provider. These are the folks who own the assets, the trucks, the cargo ships, the planes. A company hires them for one very specific job: transportation. They aren't planning the whole route or managing inventory. They are simply the muscle that moves your goods from point A to point B. You've definitely heard of these guys. Think of companies like FedEx or those massive ocean container lines that you see in ports around the world. You give them a box, you tell them where it needs to go, and they handle the physical journey. They are the classic hired carrier. So as a business keeps growing, things get more complicated. Suddenly, just hiring one truck isn't going to cut it. You might find yourself managing a trucking company, an ocean carrier, and a customs broker. It can become a total headache. And that's exactly why you take the next big step up the ladder. You realize you don't just need muscle anymore. You need a manager. And that is where the 3PL comes in. A third-party logistics provider, or 3PL, is a huge leap forward. They're not just a carrier you hire for a single trip. No. A company outsources entire operations to a 3PL. We're talking warehousing, order fulfillment, and managing all those different carriers so that you don't have to. You know, the term 3PL became so common that back in 2008, the US government actually wrote it into law to formally define it. And the most important part of that definition is this: a 3PL never actually owns the product. They're a trusted partner who manages your stuff, but it's always still your stuff. So this is the really crucial point. A 2PL, they execute a task, like driving a truck. A 3PL manages an entire process. They're the ones coordinating the warehouse, the customs paperwork, and the truck, and making sure all those moving parts work together perfectly. And the scope of what they do can be absolutely massive. I mean, we're talking about everything from running warehouses and handling customs to finding the best shipping options and moving freight across different modes of transport, like from a ship to a train to a truck. They essentially become the logistics department for a company. Okay, we're reaching the top of the ladder now. So if a 3PL is the day-to-day operations manager making sure everything runs smoothly, what's a 4PL? Well, a 4PL is the strategic brain behind the whole operation. They're like the architect who designed the entire system from the ground up. A fourth-party logistics provider, sometimes called a lead logistics provider or LLP, they don't just manage the plan you give them. A company hires a 4PL when their supply chain needs to be a real competitive advantage. They dig into your entire business to design the absolute most efficient supply chain possible. So what makes a 4PL really different from a 3PL? Well, there are a few key things. They usually act as a single point of contact for the client, kind of like a general contractor for your supply chain. They manage all the different 3PLs and carriers, and often they're set up as a completely separate company or a joint venture with their client. Let me put it this way. A 4PL is the one asking the really big questions. Questions like, where in the country should we build our next warehouse to be most efficient? Or, what's the absolute best mix of air, sea, and land transport for our new product launch? They are the high-level strategists. So, there you have it. We've climbed all the way from that simple farm truck to the high-level supply chain architect. Now, let's just zoom out for a second and talk about why this whole logistics ladder concept is so important for any business that's trying to grow. This little table here really lays it all out perfectly. You start with the 1PL, the do-it-yourselfer, then you move up to the 2PL, which is like your hired carrier, your muscle. Then you get to the 3PL, your integrated manager. And finally, you have the 4PL, the supply chain architect. Each step up that ladder means more outsourcing and a higher level of strategic control. See, at the end of the day, this isn't just a list of definitions. The logistics ladder really tells a story about how businesses grow and evolve. As companies get bigger and more complex, they strategically hand off more and more of their supply chain to specialized partners. Why? So they can gain efficiency, tap into expertise, and focus on what they do best, making their actual product. So we've made it to the top of our ladder, for now. But you know, the world of logistics and technology never, ever stops changing. Which leaves us with one last question to chew on. If a 4PL designs the supply chain for a single company, what in the world could a 5PL possibly do? That's a great question for another time.